1 week season.
1 week season, fam. La Familia, welcome back. It is Monday, May 12th, our first regularly scheduled Wake and Snake of the season, our third one so far. Things are rolling along. We're expecting the NFL schedule release coming out shortly. That is when things really get going. But of course, we have already kicked things off with our Best Ball Plus and Best Ball Basics subscriptions. We are coming to you every week with our Wake and Snake on Monday or Tuesday, and then towards the end of the week, Hilo will be following that up. And then obviously, Best Ball Plus, our premium subscription. Have a couple training sessions already up in there. Hilo has one coming out today, and I will have a couple more coming out in the next couple of days. Of course, when you are here for Wake and Snake, generally we're coming to you earlier in the day on Mondays. We are snake drafting, live drafts, usually on drafters. Sometimes we'll hop onto DraftKings if it's taking a little while to fill. Might mix in a couple of underdog drafts throughout the season as well, specifically in like maybe some snapshot contests, that sort of thing. I'm not really a best ball mania guy myself, but we'll get more into that in the training sessions and the written pieces for our subscribers. With all of that being said, happy to welcome back my esteemed co-host, Billy Gableman, StatATL. How we doing, Billy?
Buddy, I'm doing so great now that I'm back to being esteemed. Life is good.
You earned it. You earned it. It's nothing is given, everything is earned. And you after a slight probationary period, unintentional probationary period, you really stepped your game up. And sometimes pressure makes diamonds, right?
That's what they say. It's always good to be back with you. I'm excited. We got best ball season kind of almost in full force here with the schedule coming out here soon. And for those of you who don't know, both Mike and I are pretty big golf fans. So love second major of the year coming up this week. So that's awesome.
Sir. And we're both actually in this draft, myself and Stat drafting out of the 3-hole. This is, of course, the $20 main event championship on Drafters, $2.5 million prize pool, $500,000 to first. This has not quite filled the last couple of years, has had around 15 to 25% overlay each of the 3 years it's been out. I think it'll be a little bit closer. I don't know if it'll actually fill this year. Hopefully for drafters' sake. Obviously, I'm a big fan and proponent of their site and how they do things over there. So, obviously overlay is nice in the short term, gives you a little bit bump in ROI, but also for these sites to sustain, we do want it to fill. We want things to go well, so that they stick around in this awesome format, this awesome interface that they have. We get to keep enjoying.
Yeah, it looks like they tried to be a little proactive about it this year. And scaling it down a bit. I mean, it's still a massive contest, but they've brought it down from, I think it was like 186,000 entrants last year down to like 150, 140, 150. So, it got to that number last year. I think it's gotten to that number the last 2 years. It's gotten into that 140, 150 range. It just hadn't filled. So I think that they've kind of seen maybe that's where the market is for drafters. So, yeah, I agreed. Love this site, love the interface. I'm hoping for drafters and for us draftees that continues to flourish.
Yeah, it actually was at 86,000 entries 2 years ago.
Okay,
that was out of that was also a $20 entry fee. At that point, it was the max would have been 111,000. It was a slightly smaller prize pool. It was just under 86,000 entries. And then last year, they upped it. They lowered the entry fee. They upped the prize pool. So yeah, that last year ended up at about 150,000. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see though. They've done a good job promoting and with the specials, bringing on new users and whatnot. Of course, I don't want to forget if you are looking to join Drafters, if you have not played on there before, if you join up over there, create an account. If you use code OWS on your first deposit, you will get a 100% deposit match up to $100. So that's a free $100. Throw $100 on, you'll have $200 to work with. A lot of fun. They also have, of course, their $2 tournament. I'll step away here because it's going to be a little bit before I pick again. But they have their $2 tournament, which is really cool. Low price point, can get a lot of reps in. $100,000 prize pool, $10,000 to first. So that one, kind of expecting that will fill again by end of June. And then they'll do a second one similar to last year. And then this main event that we're drafting in right now, $500,000 to first. Top 20 places make 10 grand. So very cool. I, of course, am somewhat biased. Took 7th in this 2 years ago for 30 grand. And that's, kind of, I don't want to say I have it figured out, but I feel like just the nature of the cumulative scoring contest, removing that pod luck aspect that you run into on Underdog and DraftKings, there's a higher probability of actually like being able to figure something out and gain an edge that doesn't just by randomness get taken away. We get into all of that at 1 week season on the Best Ball Plus stuff and a little bit on the Best Ball Basics and the written stuff, which we'll have a bunch of stuff coming out this week and then really rev it up once the schedule hits, which as far as I know should be this I think May 15th is the target date. I'm going to look that up quick.
Yeah, I know. While you're doing that, you are on the clock, so I mean, I can help you with that.
Yeah, May 14th, this Wednesday. Yep. Oh, look at me.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, I know. While you're making some picks, let me kind of talk through, I guess, high level. We always like to try to talk through any of the news that's kind of happened since our last stream. And I think it's kind of old news now, but we had the George Pickens trade. I think that was 6 days ago now. We shed some light in Discord, kind of, I know you gave a little deep dive into your thoughts on that fallout, what that looks like for not just Pickens, but kind of the ancillary pieces in Dallas and what that looks like for Lamb and for Dak, and really love that insight. And then I think the big news over the weekend was the Derek Carr retirement. I don't know that it's official yet, right? Has he come out and said he's officially retiring? I know there's like Schefter kind of dropped that.
I don't know exactly what his comments were, but it's been confirmed.
Yep.
That's the I don't know specifically, but I mean, there's been enough reputable people that it's real.
Sure.
It's just a matter of, for Chris Olave, no more concussion balls across the middle, hopefully. So he's got to be a little bit excited, or if you own him in like a dynasty league, that's some good news. Nothing against Derek Carr, but he kept leaving Olave out to dry on those intermediate routes, and Olave missed time with 2 concussions last year. So maybe slight bump to him there. I think that the George Pickens, the Dallas trade, interesting from a schematic standpoint. Last year, CeeDee Lamb, he was the wide receiver 1 2 years ago. Last year, he was the wide receiver 5, despite not playing week 17. So he still had a nice season, but, he was 115 points behind Jamar Chase, which is a pretty big drop when, he was being drafted with a top 3 pick. So, that was a pretty big drop off, and it's not like he had any, Lamb didn't have any like massive games during the playoffs for playoff formats where it's like, oh, well, he let you down throughout the season, but could have carried you at low ownership. Nothing like that. For him personally, I see he went number 4 in this draft. I think the Pickens edition, I don't know that adding a player that's that good. And I think Pickens is super talented. He'll probably get a new contract from Dallas soon as well. if he doesn't, then he might not even be on the field because he seems like a little bit of a head case and probably not going to go for that. But I'm sure they're working on something. I think Lamb's floor is raised a little bit by adding Pickens, which may seem counterintuitive, but just assuming Pickens gets a contract and plays and all is good there, adding another talent like that kind of reduces the chances of Dallas's season really going down the drain. I think they have kind of a tougher schedule. They've obviously got the Commanders and Eagles within their division, and then some of their non-division games that they play. It could go bad, could go poorly if with their backfield not having much and not much behind Lamb. So adding Pickens, I think, raises that floor for Lamb. And I think, Pickens, obviously, we haven't seen him. He's a super talented player. We know that. But we have yet to see him in like a pass first offense. So,
even in college. Yeah, I saw him. I said even in college, I saw him a bunch at UGA, and UGA has always been a run first, play defense team.
Mm-hmm. Right,
yeah,
I'm up to pick. Looks like we do have J.A. Seward, who's been a 1 week season subscriber for quite some time. I'll go ahead and I'll take Pickens because we've been talking about him. We'll give him a little shout out. Pairing up Kittle with McCaffrey there, locking in with that 49ers connection. Jawan Jennings on the board there. Also, Ricky Pearsall. I've actually got a written piece coming out this week. Going to talk about the 49ers and some other situations similar to this, like the 49ers wide receiver core. You've got Jennings, Pearsall, and Ayuk all going in like the early 6th through the 8th round. Kind of an uncertain situation as far as, none of them profile like AJ Brown, Malik Neighbors, like a true alpha type. But someone is likely to come out of there as like the main guy. So
agree.
It's one of those things where like projection systems, and I know there's been a lot throughout the industry. Some sites have these like overlay tools that they'll kind of suggest who you should pick at each pick. Specifically, I think those are. I don't want to go too deep of a dive into it, but I think that those are probably more handy for like the daily drafts and an underdog or like weekly when you get to NFL season. I think a season long 17 weeks, it's a little bit harder to realize like an edge there. That's just my take. Again, I don't want to get too deep into it. But
yeah, I think that try to transition a little bit into it. I think for those of us who have been following along with us the last year and whatnot, I think a new wrinkle that we're planning on rolling out this year for you and I, Mike, is to do some of these drafts, but kind of more behind the paywall, where we kind of talk through more of our thoughts, talk through.
You're up here, right?
Yep,
okay.
I'm up.
Gotcha. All right, good.
Thanks, buddy. Just kind of talk more of our inside talking construction. When I do a lot of the playoff best ball content, I spend a lot of time not only talking about my thought process during the picks, but also commenting on other teams in the draft, because I think that's super important as well. If you're looking at some of these draft boards, like the guy directly to my left just took his first wide receiver, in the 6th round. So kind of looking at it and saying, okay, if I was really high and I was considering Addison, not to get too deep into it, but just because I took Jefferson in the 1st round, like considering building more of that mini Minnesota stack just because of how late you can get, McCarthy and whatnot, just knowing that it was unlikely that Addison's coming back to me, just knowing that guy is likely taking a wide receiver. Like if you're not paying attention to that, those details kind of go unnoticed.
Let's see. So I'll take Ayuk, and then I'll take Brian Robinson. Have we talked about him on past weeks?
We
Robinson?
have, yeah. I think that for me, he's a guy that I've really liked. His ADP has continued to rise a bit. I remember the very first stream we did 2 weeks ago. I think we took him at the 9-10 turn. Funny enough, you were drafting in the 11 or 12 hole again, and I think we took him at like 110 or something like that. His ADPs continue to rise just because it's just likely he's getting touches on a good offense, and he's been productive. The last couple of years. So I think he's probably settled into about where I would expect him to still be, assuming no major news comes out of Washington. I think the 8th round is probably about where he should be in terms of value. I think he was a good value when you were getting him in the hundreds.
Yeah. And then obviously I took Brandon Ayuk there, 84th overall, at that turn. That's kind of where his ADP is, right at that 7-8 turn. He's an interesting one. I'm going to talk, like I said, about this 49ers team in one of our written pieces that'll be available to Best Ball Basics and Best Ball Plus subscribers. And going to dive into, just how that whole team looks, kind of the outlook for that receiving core. But Ayuk, he tore his ACL. It was, from all indications, it was a relatively clean ACL tear, so not a lot of like other damage. It was in a loss to the Chiefs back on October 20th. So, you're almost a year clear there by the time, you're 11 months clear basically when the NFL season kicks off. 9 months is generally when you start seeing guys these days coming back from ACL stuff. So it wouldn't be shocking at all to see him on the field week 1 out there for training camp. And he has some, last year he didn't have his best season. Obviously he was kind of 49ers offense was never really got going, but he did have a wide receiver 12 season back in 2023. He's put up he's proven it before, and now Debo's gone. So definitely an interesting target for me.
Yeah, and to me, I think he's obviously, you laid out a great bear and pro and con case there. To me, he's worth the risk at this ADP where he's going now, kind of typically that 7th, 8th round. To me, that's worth the risk.
Yeah.
I personally think he's got not wide receiver 1 overall, but to be a top 12, top 15 wide receiver, he has that upside in him. And to me, you're getting him at the 30th or 40th wide receiver off the board, if not more. So yeah, I think it's worth the risk.
And then, just to circle back on the Robinson pick, I won't go too deep on him specifically, but you look at the running backs after him, Scatabo and Tracy from the Giants. You've got Pacheco from the Chiefs. Bashul Tutin for the Jaguars, really rising up boards. He's going at pick 101 now. Charbonnet and Mason. Those Robinson's like the last guy who's pretty clearly like the guy in his backfield, right? And then who is also, I'll add this caveat, who is also on a good offense. You could argue that, well, I guess, Pacheco, he never really got the job back fully last season. I'm going to take Purdy, continue my 49ers approach here. Added Najee Harris, running back for the Chargers, who being picked at that 9th, 10th round. Obviously, they drafted Omarion Hampton in the 4th round, but in the 1st round of the NFL draft. He's generally going in the 4th or 5th round of drafts. But he again should be a pretty good offense, a run-based offense for the Chargers. But like Robinson is like the last back you can really take who, like, you could be pretty sure he's going to have a sizable role when he's on the field. And he's in a good offense. So he's a guy that I'll probably end up with a lot of, or at least that's how it's looking. Unless he's a guy I feel like that everything I just said about him, people are going to start kind of figuring out. Um, and he's not like the sexiest pick, but as the season gets closer, I could see him moving up to like the 6-7 turn.
Yeah, I think people have started to figure that out from 2 weeks ago when we did this first draft when he literally went 2 rounds later. I agree. He's not the sexiest pick, but again, he's generally not your RB1 on these builds. You know what I mean? For you, he's at least your second or third running back. Looking at your full, he might be.
McCaffrey than him.
If you're taking a running back in the first round, we've kind of talked about like the expectation of what you're expecting to get out of him on this particular build. So,
all right. Yeah, Kyler Murray, 99th pick that you got him before, and then you get a Egbuka here. I like the Murray and Marvin Harrison connection. Interesting that Harrison. I'm somewhat surprised he's. I guess you could say reached a hair on him. He's a lot of times he's going in the third round, but he's an interesting one, just with how last season played out. And then, but that Arizona offense, it could be a little bit of a sleeping giant with McBride and Harrison, kind of coming into their own. Kyler Murray, another year removed. He had a full season under his belt, tore that ACL a couple of years ago. So, it'll be interesting kind of how some of this stuff plays out.
Yeah. I probably, again, this is, as you can see in the, one of the things I do like about the drafters, interface, you could see that this is my first draft of the $20. So a little bit kind of feeling it out, getting an idea. I probably reached a little on JJ McCarthy. It was just, I'm invested here in Jefferson and Hawkinson on this build. And I think McCarthy's ADP is like 135. I'm willing to reach 10 spots to make sure I'm kind of completing the bet that I've made on this build. To me, that's not really reaching, but that's just my opinion on it.
Yeah.
I think when you're in 1, 2, 3 or 10, 11, 12 in terms of those drafting positions, it's so long before your next picks that you got to be willing to go half a round early on a guy to just kind of make sure that you're getting what you need on a roster. You can't be a slave to the ADP. You got to be willing to see what makes sense for your build.
Oh, for sure.
So I see you grabbed Hollywood Brown. So I've done a couple of these in the $2. I think Hollywood Brown is the guy that I'm confused, I guess we'll say, on why he goes so late. I know he dealt with a bit of an injury last year, but he's on a strong offense, and he's obviously you've got the injury concerns because he's had a history of not staying healthy. But to me, in the double-digit rounds, he's a guy that if he stays healthy, he's a guy you're likely getting several usable weeks out of at his position. He's a guy that I really like in the 9th, 10th, 11th round targeting personally on builds where I need a wide receiver or wide receiver upside. Go ahead.
And people always say, make the comment of like, oh, this guy's better in best ball. And like a lot of times it's guys who, they think, they've had a couple of like 70-yard touchdowns in their career. So they think, oh, good in best ball. But like, it's not just like the monster weeks. It's a matter of, like you said, Brown, they still have Kelsey, Rice is back, Worthy is there. So there's still, there's a lot going on there in Kansas City. There's a lot of players. he might not have these 40-point weeks, but he could have 5 or 6, 15 to 20-point weeks, which are very, very helpful, in a season-long best ball. Again, some of these are going to be very unpredictable. So, in DFS or in just season-long drafting where you've got to set a lineup each week, might be frustrating, might not really be worth it. He might be a guy where like you're kind of writing him off and you end up dropping him, and then that's when he has the 20-point week. So sometimes I think people get too focused or thinking about like these like absolutely massive weeks. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that sort of situation to be a player who fits the format really well. And I think Brown, like you said, he can give you several usable weeks. Um, you know, Rice and Worthy potentially have suspensions coming at some point. Uh,
Mhm.
Kelsey is, no spring chicken by any means. Be interesting to see. He's claiming he's going to be like a, back uh, locked in, fully. He didn't. There was talk of retirement, but he had such a poor outing in the Super Bowl. I'm gonna go ahead and take Cam Ward as my quarterback here, quarterback 2, and then we'll add Romeo Dubs so that we can talk about that Packers receiver situation as well.
That's perfect, because as a Packer homer that you are, buddy, I wanted to make sure we allot some time to talk about Green Bay. I wore my green for you today, buddy.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, what was I on just before this?
You were talking about the Chiefs and Kelsey. I'm aligned with you
yeah.
there. I don't think Kelsey wants to go out that way. He said such a career.
Brown is a guy who he's tied to a good offense, and I think sometimes our specific player takes, and we can get too in the weeds, especially when we're in May and June right now. When the reality is things are going to change, we don't really know, and I think all things being equal, like he's a wide receiver who, if everyone's healthy, he's in the like on field, the 11 for the Kansas City Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes. So
Mhm.
all else equal, that's the type of guy that I think is a good target, generally speaking. With those next 2 picks, I took Tyjae Spears and Cam Ward. Ward is just, again, I don't want to get too deep on, because there's varying thoughts on Ward and on the Titans, him as a prospect, how this season looks. But like, if you just kind of blindly take some shots on quarterback in this range, these younger guys who have like locked in jobs, Ward fits the profile. He can make some big plays. I don't know what his career will look like, but getting him, in this 13th, 14th round range, uh, fits pretty well, in my opinion, as like an upside type play, especially on drafters where, however many, whether they get 140,000 or whether it's only 120,000 entries or whatever, like you're trying to have the best team out of all of those teams.
Mhm.
You can't, just as well as like pod luck can hurt you on those other sites, it can also help you. Like you could have an inferior team over the course of a season, but if things break right in that 3-week window, you're good. But on drafters, you've kind of got to strive for perfection, and you've got to strive for upside on a lot of these picks. And we go through how to try to do that at 1 week season. But back to the Dubs pick, the Green Bay wide receiver situation. They selected Matthew Golden in the first round. In my opinion, I will be surprised if we see Christian Watson this season,
Mhm.
or his ACL at the end of last year. Um, I don't really see it. I think the Golden signing, I would expect Golden and Dubs and Jaden Reed to kind of be the primary Packers wide receivers. Dontavian Wicks is still there, but he's been frustrating for the team. They drafted Savion Williams in the 3rd round. Um, I'm guessing those will be the 5 on the roster unless they make a trade at some point.
Yeah. I
Which
like. I know that you mentioned the team being frustrated. I like where you can grab Wicks at. I mean, he's generally an 18th, 19th round pick, and we have seen his ups at 209. We'll put him in the 18th round. Yeah, I mean that's to me, we have seen upside, and I don't want to call them spike weeks, but we've seen 20-point weeks out of him on more than one. And he's a young guy. To me, that's the type of guy that I don't mind taking 18th, 19th round as my wide receiver, 7, 8, a 9. Like, I know we get into it a bit more behind the paywall in terms of like usable weeks and things like that, but he's a guy that I like late in drafts. I think he gives you that type of upside, and he's one injury away on one of those wide receivers to potentially being an every week. I don't want to say guy because we're not playing DFS here, but he's to those 3 guys. He's one disappointment, one injury away from being viable almost every week.
Yeah, and the thing with him too is like he's easy to kind of write off because of those disappointments, but also like the things he has done to disappoint are dropping some passes. He might have misread a couple things, just from that standpoint, but he has the physical ability, he has the technical ability, like he's a great route runner. Like we saw, I mean, even like I believe, yeah, it was 2 years ago, his rookie year, he was compared by Matt LaFleur to Davante Adams, who Davante Adams famously had struggles early in his career with drops and that sort of thing. So it's just interesting. And then, Dubs, who I selected here, he's being picked in the 14th round. I believe his ADP is, in the 14th round. Just he's been a guy that's been trusted, but he's also entering his contract year. And he's a guy that last year he had like a little spat and they basically like suspended him for a game because he was throwing a fit about usage and stuff. So yeah, there's just some uncertainty there. And you've got, Dubs in the 14th round, Wicks in the 18th. Easily could see one of these guys being traded and going to a place where maybe they have more clear path or they can separate themselves or just an offense that throws a little more. And even if not, the Green Bay offense should score some points, and kind of to the Hollywood Brown discussion earlier, they might have a bunch of duds for you. You might not want to have to decide when to use them, but there's probably going to be some times where you can use them.
Yeah. I'm probably coming a little early. Early on, my last pick is probably my favorite early sleeper in this part of the drafting season.
Isaac Tesla.
Yeah. I've seen the reports out of camp about him. It looks like he's got a chance to be an every down wide receiver for Detroit, and Detroit looks like it's probably going to be a top 5 offense again this year. So if you're giving me a late round guy that potentially is going to be on the field most snaps for a great offense, that's a spot I'm looking to buy. I considered Dontavian Wicks here as well, just because my roster is in need of some wide receivers. That's probably where I'll go with, 2, maybe 3 out of my last 3 picks. But I wanted to save Wicks for you. I wanted you to get a couple of Packers on this squad.
I appreciate that. And then I'll take Chig Okonkwo as my second tight end. Another guy, he's got like huge. I think he had a 70-yard touchdown last year. He's got great run after catch ability. This Tennessee offense, who knows what it'll look like with Brian Callahan. His first year with, he was really good. He came over from Cincinnati. Obviously they've done a nice job there, even with him and still without him last year. But going from Joe Burrow to the Will Levis situation, obviously Levis was a guy, I took some shots on and threw my, gave some opportunity to the uncertainty there last year. It didn't pay off, but Ward, by basically any metric, is a huge step off in terms of his skill set, his tools. So will be interesting again to see what that Tennessee offense looks like. And then just pairing Wicks with Dubs. You get to these later rounds. There's a chance that if everything stays as is, one of these guys is going to be on the field basically every snap, right? I would think Dubs is the starter as things currently look. Wicks, if something were to happen to Dubs or he gets traded, has a good chance to fill in there. Otherwise, one of them could leave, in which case both would have opportunity. But it's for a 14th and 17th round pick I got him for here. So, I like, kind of pairing that and just letting the chips fall where they may.
Yeah, I like it.
Look at you saving 14 rounds of draft capital from last year on Amari Cooper.
I figured you'd call me out on that. Actually, I was hoping for either Roman Wilson or Tyler Lockett. Like, to me, like, Tyler Lockett is such a sneaky pick in this like 17th, 18th, 19th round. Like, it's so interesting to me that like a guy who could potentially be the wide receiver one, Tennessee's just a bunch of rookies. And
well, they got Ridley still.
Outside of Ridley, what else is his competition?
Bunch of rookies.
A bunch of he's a guy that proven wide receiver. Like, to me, if you've got a draft where you're taking some shots on some rookie or second round wide receivers, maybe a little bit earlier in the draft, he's a guy that I like early on. You know what I mean? Like, week 1 counts just as much as week 17 in this format. So he's a guy that I like. And obviously we've talked a little bit about Roman Wilson over in the Discord with just what that situation potentially has opened up for him with the Pickens departure. Maybe nothing, but again, he's a guy that I like taking in the last couple rounds as well.
Yeah, to touch back briefly on your Tesla pick, which was a couple rounds ago now, but he's, he is they traded up over a round for him, and he wasn't a guy that was getting like a bunch of publicity or that people were like all over. So interesting there, just with the way that things played out. We saw Tim Patrick join them and kind of had some nice games down the stretch. He had a guy who had he had a lot of duds, but a couple of solid games. But Tesla is, he's physical. He's fast. He can do a lot of things down the field. Let's see, I'm up. I'm going to take a third tight end. I'm going to take Ben Sanat for the Commanders. And then I'm going to take Elijah Moore because I want to talk about him quickly.
Sure.
But where was I on? Oh, the Tesla. Yeah. So, I mean, Jameson Williams has had some injury issues. He's had, some suspension stuff. He's entering his 4th season. So, they haven't yet picked up his 5th-year option. So it'll be an interesting how that all plays out for sure. But I think, again, the theme of it, targeting a team that there's a lot of teams that we think are going to be good, but maybe they won't be. There's a lot of teams that maybe are projecting poorly that you could make a case like this could be a year where they improve a lot, like maybe the Patriots or the Titans that we talked about. But Detroit's one of those few teams that they're going to have a solid offense, unless it's injuries situation like their defense had last year were to happen to their offense, that's basically, the path to them not having a really good offense, in my opinion. So just getting shots on goal with those types of guys are interesting. I took Ben Sinnott, another Washington guy. I've got Brian Robinson on here as well, but Zach Ertz became a regularly used, highly used target for Jaden Daniels last season. But he is 35 years old. Sinnott was a second-round pick a year ago, so wouldn't be shocking to see him hop on. I wouldn't be surprised to see him hop on or take over that spot, whether it's by injury or just age, similar to what we saw in Arizona, right? Something similar with Trey McBride, where Ertz was there and kind of slowly phased out, and McBride came on. I don't think Sinnott, I don't have that kind of upside for, but he could certainly be a guy who's on the field a lot for a really good offense. Kind of the theme here. And then Elijah Moore, he's a guy I loved coming out of college. Super talented. You look at his career, with the Jets, then with the Browns, a lot going on there last year. Deshaun Watson. He's still really talented in that Buffalo receiving core. There's opportunity, right? He could be on the field a lot with Josh Allen. So again, kind of the theme of today, targeting guys like that who, maybe they can step into, a bigger role, or things break the right way. And, he has a few big weeks for the Bills.
Yeah. I think you nailed it, but I think the Bills wide receiver core is questionable, a little shaky.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I certainly don't mind taking a shot on Elijah Moore. Let's see how you did here. Trying to pull up your squad over here.
Yeah, I've got it up. So ended up, for the people listening on our podcast feed, Brock Purdy and Cam Ward at quarterback. 6 running backs are Christian McCaffrey, Brian Robinson, Najee Harris, Tyjae Spears, Will Shipley, and Dylan Sampson. Shipley, of course, the direct backup to Saquon Barkley. Had a long touchdown in the playoffs last year, I believe in the AFC Championship game. And Dylan Sampson, 4th-round rookie for the Browns, who many people thought would be drafted slightly earlier. Then at wide receiver, I've got Brian Thomas, Mike Evans, Xavier Worthy, George Pickens, Brandon Ayuk, Hollywood Brown, Romeo Doubs, and Dontavian Wicks from the Packers, and Elijah Moore, who's on the Bills now. And then at tight end, George Kittle, Chig Okonkwo, and Ben Sinnott. So yeah, I'm pretty pleased with the team. I think we touched on a lot of situations too, and kind of the theme we talked about is targeting those stronger offenses, the higher certainty, stronger offenses. Once you get to some of these later picks, how are you feeling about your squad on here?
Pull it up for me. I don't have it full screen for me. I think the only thing for me that I was debating at the end, do I consider Aaron Rodgers was still on the board at 20. And so I considered that as a third quarterback. And then, but I felt like, I'm taking a risk with Amari Cooper, who's like, I think a free agent right now. Like I don't think he's on any roster. So that could end up being a completely dead pick. So I felt like I probably needed to take another wide receiver there. So yeah, I think from a construction standpoint, I think we both go 2, 6, 9, 3?
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess for people listening in, I went Kyler and JJ McCarthy at quarterback, running back Chase Brown, Montgomery, Pacheco, Ray Davis, Braylon Allen, Roshan Johnson. So yeah, I'm fine with quarterback. I think running back is questionable, to be honest. I feel like you've got some question marks there. Wide receiver, I don't mind this room at all. Jefferson, Marvin Harrison, Zay Flowers, Cortland Sutton, Amika there. I've got my guy Tesla. Amari Cooper, we don't know what's going to happen there. And then Trey Tucker, Troy Franklin, two guys, second-year players, I think could take some steps this year. And then TJ Hawkinson, Isaiah Likely, Hunter Henry. So don't mind it. First draft of the season could have been worse.
Yeah. Wanted to touch briefly on Mad Sox, the listener said Ward is a cheaper version of Justin Fields. I can kind of see that comp. I don't know that he'll run quite as much as Fields, but over the course of his career, I think Fields is like they're going to purposely run Fields 10 to 12 times a game. That's kind of the Jets' plan. Might get up to 15. I don't think that'll be the plan for Ward, but also, they still don't have, to your point about Tyler Lockett earlier, it's not like they have earth-shattering talent around him. So very possible that that Ward ends up with more rushing attempts than the team would like or would plan for, just because he is able to scramble and kind of make something out of nothing. It's kind of his MO. So, from a best ball perspective standpoint, I don't mind that comp at all. I could see, Fields is one who he only averaged 12.5 fantasy points per game last year as a starter on the Steelers. I think it's going to kind of be a similar offensive approach for the Jets this year. And Fields is going in the top 100 picks pretty consistently. Has an ADP, has an ADP in the 8th round at 93.4 on drafters. So he's one that's kind of interesting to me, especially with all these quarterbacks that are going after him. You got Kyler Murray 7 picks later. Then you got Dak, Caleb, Goff, Purdy, and a bunch of these other higher upside guys in the low double-digit rounds. So, Fields is an interesting one to me. I do like Ward, and the opportunity cost is very different there. So,
I think, and obviously player takes in May are going to be quite different than 3 months from now. And based on current ADP, I don't like Fields at all personally. I feel like the guys that are going after him offer more floor, just being better offenses. Give me Arizona, Dallas, Chicago's just the next 3 picks, or 2 picks before him. Give me any of those guys before Fields, in my opinion. I feel like the ceiling is just as high with any of those guys, and I know that they outside of Knicks. You're probably not. You got some upside out of Kyler. You've got some rushing upside out of Caleb Williams. You got some upside out of Bone. To me, all of those guys are just better plays than Fields.
Yeah, I concur. I think we've kind of touched on all of it. Obviously, touched a little bit on the Saints situation. I don't think a ton changed with as far as outlook. I could maybe see if things go south, maybe Alvin Kamara gets moved, but also his contract is a bit of an albatross. So, Chris Olave should stay healthier, hopefully. But otherwise, I think that just about does it. Thank you all for joining us. We'll be back again next week. I've got a scheduling thing on Monday, so we might be shooting for Tuesday again next week. We'll let you know in the Discord. Billy, thanks for joining me in the draft. I
kind of like it. That was the first time I think we've drafted together on stream. It's a little bit tougher with back and forth because we're both kind of making sure we're following our teams as well. But I think we might plan for that again sometime. And I guess I'll give a little bit of a potential teaser. You may not have to wait until next Tuesday to see Mike and I again on stream. So
we're PGA Championship this week. Billy's deep in the PGA streets. I play the majors and a few other events. So we've just been tossing around the idea of hopping on and just talking through that a little bit on here for you guys. If there's any golf fans out there, or if you just really enjoy our in-depth analysis and my varying backgrounds. You can stop in just to check that out. So, yeah, I think that's going to do it for us. Thank you all for joining us. Once again, we are 1 week season. We have our Best Ball Basic subscription for $29, our Best Ball Plus premium subscription for $99. Things are going live there daily, basically, at this point, and really going to rev up. Wednesday is the NFL schedule release, and that's when we hit the ground running and maximize our expected value and take care of the optimizer bros. So with all that being said, I am Mike. He is Billy. Thank you for joining us. Have a great week, and we
1 week season.